The colony of Threshold 7 burned. Elif pressed her scaled hand against the viewport of the emergency bunker, watching orange flames consume the settlement she'd called home for 3 cycles. The Krell raiders had come without warning, their ships tearing through Threshold's minimal defenses like claws through paper. Now they circled overhead like carrion birds, systematically destroying everything the colonists had built. "Communications are dead," Jack said behind her, his voice tight with frustration. The human engineer slammed his fist against the console, making the dying electronics sputter. "The relay station's gone. No distress signal got through." Elif's throat sacs deflated with despair. As a Valerian, she'd lived through 2 wars already, but this felt different. More final. Threshold 7 was a border colony, barely registered on any galactic map. The Krell knew it. That's why they'd chosen this place to raid. "How many of us left?" she asked quietly. 43 souls in this bunker, maybe another 100 scattered in the other shelters. Jack ran a hand through his dark hair, leaving streaks of ash. "The Krell won't leave until they've stripped everything valuable. Then they'll hunt us for sport." Elif had heard the stories. The Krell didn't just raid for resources. They enjoyed the chase, the terror. A Valerian elder named Kos huddled nearby with his younglings, their skin flickering between blue and gray with fear. A Thorian family clutched each other with all 4 arms. Humans, Valerians, Thorians, even 2 Zephites. All of them would die here, forgotten on the edge of civilized space. "No one's coming," Elif whispered. "We're too far from the Federation border." Jack's jaw clenched. She'd worked with the human for 2 years, building Threshold's irrigation systems and power grid. She'd learned to read his expressions. That particular set to his features meant he was thinking something dangerous. "The Federation won't come," he agreed. "But that doesn't mean no one will." "Jack, the nearest human outpost is 12 systems away. 11.3, he corrected, pulling up a battered datapad. His fingers flew across the screen. "And humans don't abandon their people, ever. It's kind of our thing. Even out here? We're barely registered as a protectorate. Doesn't matter." Jack's voice carried absolute certainty. "There's an old human saying, 'No one gets left behind.' The Colonial Defense Force monitors every human settlement, no matter how small. When we went dark, they noticed." Elif wanted to believe him. She'd learned that humans were different from other species, impulsive, emotional, seemingly irrational in their attachments. But this seemed like desperate hope talking. The bunker shook as another explosion rocked the colony above. Screams echoed through the cramped space. A Thorian child began to wail. "Even if they noticed," Elif said gently, "they couldn't get here in time. The Krell will finish their raid within hours." Jack met her eyes and she saw something fierce burning there. "You don't know humans very well yet, do you?" Before she could respond, a sound cut through the chaos. A sound that made every human in the bunker snap their heads up simultaneously. It was a howl, transmitted on every emergency frequency, a predator's scream that seemed to come from the void itself. Jack's face split into a savage grin. "That's the CDN Retribution's battle cry." "That's impossible," Elif breathed. "Nothing travels that fast. Human warships on emergency burn due." Jack was already moving, pulling up external sensors. "We tear the engines apart doing it, but when one of ours calls for help, we don't count the cost." The sensor screen flickered to life, showing 6 signatures dropping from FTL at velocities that should have been impossible. Elif watched in disbelief as human warships materialized around Threshold 7, their hulls still glowing from the friction of emergency translation. The Krell raiders had noticed too. They were breaking orbit, trying to flee. They were far too slow. The lead human warship, the Retribution, opened fire with weapons that turned night into day. Railgun slugs moving at relativistic speeds tore through Krell shields like they were tissue. Missile pods deployed in clouds, each warhead guided by AIs that had been programming themselves for war since humanity first reached the stars. "They came," Elif whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "They actually came." "Told you," Jack said, but his voice was thick too. He pulled up the communication channel and a crisp military voice filled the bunker. "Threshold 7. This is Captain Maria Chen of the CDN Retribution. We received your automated beacon failure alert. Sorry for the delay. Had to push the engines past red line to get here. Hang tight, folks. We're bringing you home." Overhead, the Krell were dying. The human warships moved with brutal efficiency, coordination born from a species that had spent millennia perfecting warfare. It wasn't a battle. It was an execution. Within minutes, the Krell fleet was debris. Elif turned to Jack, saw tears streaming down his face even as he smiled. Around them, the other survivors were crying, laughing, embracing each other. Human and non-human alike. All of them saved by a species that refused to accept that distance or danger was a good enough reason to abandon their own. Why? Elif asked. Why push your ships to the breaking point for one small colony? Jack looked at her, and in his eyes she saw the answer before he spoke. It was the same look she'd seen when he stayed late to help fix a Valerian family's water recycler. The same look when he'd carried a Thorian child through a storm to the medical center. Because you're one of ours now, he said simply. And humans don't leave their people behind, not ever. Not even when it's impractical, expensive, or dangerous. He gestured at the warships above, at the crews who'd risked everything to get here. That's what it means to be human. That's what it means to be humanity. As rescue shuttles began to descend through the smoke, Elif understood something fundamental about the species that had adopted her colony. They were crazy, reckless, impossibly stubborn, and she had never felt safer in her life. The Krell had thought no aid was coming. They'd never faced humanity before.